Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. And if you've taken a look at the title of this video, then you're probably aware that what I've got in store for you today is not a laugh a minute. This is not a particularly happy topic, but I do think it's a necessary one. We're looking at the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, which occurred on the feast of St. Bartholomew the Apostle in 1572 in Paris, before the violence that began there started to spread out across much of the rest of France. I want to look at the events that led up to this. What caused this eruption of extraordinary and really quite terrifying violence to take place? And I also want to look at the after effects, because to my mind, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre is one of the key causes that led to one queen killing another. So let's look at it. On October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther published his 95 Theses, a document which called attention to the excesses of the Roman Catholic Church, headed by the Holy See of Rome and the Pope. Although it's almost impossible to believe that Martin Luther could have expected what would happen in the aftermath, in doing so, he set the stage for centuries of European and arguably global conflict. However, Martin Luther was by no means the first individual to wish to engage in discussion, debate, or even conflict about the particular character of the Roman Catholic faith. This had been a matter of discussion for centuries, and frequently people had fallen out over it. Between 1562 and 1570, wars broke out 3 times in France. The cause for these conflicts was the difference of faith that was being practised by the people of the nation. Loyal Roman Catholics ranged themselves against the Protestant Huguenots. At this time, the Huguenots numbered between 10 to 15% of the population approximately, and it is believed that they came mostly from the artisan class and the nobility. As such, they were wealthy and powerful, and this made them hard to ignore. A pause to these hostilities was brought about on the 5th of August 1570, when a treaty was signed at the Château of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. It was signed by the Catholic King of France Charles IX and the leading Protestant admiral Gaspard de Coligny. Through this treaty, the Protestants were given control of 4 fortified cities: La Rochelle, Cognac, Montauban, and the Charité. In addition, the French king's mother, Catherine de' Medici, promised to marry her daughter, Marguerite de Valois, to the Protestant Henry of Navarre. Regardless of this treaty, anger and distrust continued to simmer between these rival religious factions, not only in France, but arguably across most of the rest of Europe. The wedding of Marguerite de Valois and Henry of Navarre would indeed take place just over 2 years later, on the 18th of August 1572, at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. As we will see, the aftermath of this marriage, a time which arguably should have been about peace and celebration, became something that makes Game of Thrones' Red Wedding look more like a tea party for children. This was a significant marriage, the culmination of the peace agreements of 2 years previously that saw these warring factions brought together, Catholic and Huguenot Protestant. And because of it, Protestants had come en masse to Paris to celebrate, and many of these leading Protestant Huguenots determined to stay behind after this marriage had taken place, in order that they may discuss the grievances they had with the king in the aftermath of the treaty that had taken place. Some historians allege that this was Catherine de' Medici's plan all along. She knew that by marrying her daughter to this Protestant in Paris, Protestants would, of course, be there en masse. Essentially, what people are arguing is that from the treaty of 2 years earlier, Catherine de' Medici was laying out a trap to ensnare the Huguenots and ensure that they would come to Paris for this wedding, and many of them would not leave with their lives. On the 22nd of August 1572, a member of the household of the Catholic Duke of Guise attempted to assassinate the Admiral Gaspard de Coligny in the street. While some see the Duke of Guise as being the prime mover in this assassination attempt, there are others who blame the king's mother, Catherine de' Medici. Coligny had become friends with the impressionable 22-year-old king, Charles IX. Coligny had spent much of the preceding summer encouraging the king to go to war with Spain in support of Protestants in the Netherlands. With this assassination attempt, a crisis was triggered. Paris was full of Huguenots. They were all there for the wedding that had taken place just 4 days previously. So the story goes, Catherine de' Medici spent hours with her son, convincing him to deal with the Huguenots in order to hold off a revenge attack. Eventually, Charles IX would capitulate. Just 2 days later, before dawn on the 24th of August 1572, the feast of St. Bartholomew the Apostle, the massacre began. Coligny was among the first to die, killed by servants of the Duke of Guise. Violence swiftly took hold in Paris and then spread out across much of the rest of France. It would last until October 1572. An agreed-upon consensus of the death toll for this period of violence is hard to come by. Some historians will agree that around 3,000 were killed in Paris during this time, with around 10,000 nationwide. Some argue that it was far higher, as many as 30 or even 70,000 people losing their lives. I feel extraordinarily fortunate that I can say that I have absolutely no idea just how terrifying it would have been for the Huguenots in Paris as this massacre took off. They were there with their families. Many had come to actually celebrate this wedding, and yes, they wanted to debate things with the king, but they had brought their wives and children with them. However, this painting by the Huguenot artist François Dubois might go some way to giving us a window into the event, as might this description offered to us by the Protestant minister Simon Goulart. He explains, quote, "All went with their men from house to house, wherever they thought they might find Huguenots, breaking down doors, then cruelly massacring those they encountered without regard to sex or age." He goes further and explains that 3 days after the beginning of this massacre on St. Bartholomew's Day in Paris, carts piled high with the dead bodies of noble ladies, women, girls, men and boys were brought down and emptied into the river, which was covered with dead bodies and ran red with blood. It is believed that in the aftermath of this event, many Huguenots chose to convert, or at least seemed to convert, back to the Roman Catholic faith in order to protect themselves and allow them to continue to live safely in France and Catholic Europe. For others, who were unwilling to compromise or feign their faith publicly, they fled. They went to safe Protestant states, England included. There they sought refuge and the freedom to practice their faith in safety. At the start of this video, I asserted that this event was one of the key motivating factors, as far as I was concerned, that led to one queen killing another. Well, what do I mean by that? Before and during the events of this massacre, a prominent Englishman was resident in Paris. Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth I's spymaster, was at his home in Saint-Marceau, the Paris suburb. He was there with his pregnant wife Ursula, his 5-year-old daughter Frances, his secretary Robert Beale, and Philip Sidney. He witnessed firsthand the violence of this massacre. Indeed, he attempted to take into his home Protestants, Huguenots fleeing the violence themselves. It must have been unspeakably terrifying, an event that would lodge in the memory for a lifetime. He did not only have his own life to fear for, but that of his pregnant wife and child, the members of his household, and, on top of that, the Protestants and Huguenots who had beaten a path to his door looking for sanctuary and safety. All he could hope and pray for was that his doors would hold fast against this baying mob of Parisian Catholics who, seemingly, wanted nothing more than the bloodshed of Protestants. I believe that Francis Walsingham's presence in Paris at the time of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre is a key motivating reason for the execution of Mary Queen of Scots on the 8th of February 1587. I think that Walsingham experienced a fear like no other, the sort of fear that would be indelibly marked on a person and would last a lifetime. When he became aware of a Catholic plot to depose and kill Elizabeth and replace her with Mary Queen of Scots, he would have been aware that this would have meant England coming back under Catholic rule. And I believe this would have been an anathema to him because of what he witnessed on these days. The thought that England would be a Catholic state, no longer a safe space for him and his fellow Protestants and Huguenots to live and worship, would have been intolerable. I think that is one of the reasons why he is so vehement in his pursuit of Mary Queen of Scots, why he deploys every trick in his spying arsenal so that he and his circle can bring her down completely. He was not prepared to risk the same thing happening in his nation that he had witnessed in Paris on those fateful days. 2 English playwrights would stage the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre under the title The Massacre of Paris for their audiences. The first, in 1593, was Christopher Marlowe. The second, Nathaniel Lee, in 1689. For me, these plays are evidence that the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572 still had the capacity to stir English fears for well over a century. But I'd love to know what you think of this video and of the events that I've talked about within it. So let me know in the comments section down below. Or you can come and find me over on my social media. As always, I will leave links to my Instagram and Twitter in the description box down below. You can follow me there and we can continue this conversation. I do hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then please let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. Please also subscribe to this channel, and while you're there, why not hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube tells you when I've next uploaded. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye for now.